Just say live. I will start.
Yes, yes, we are live now.
Shall I start?
Yes, we are live. We are live.
Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the ClipCon annual cybersecurity conference, where the world of cybersecurity converges to address the challenges and opportunities that define our digital age. Today, we stand at the crossroad of technology and security, and this conference serves as our campus, guiding us through the complex landscape of cyber threats and defenses. As we gather here today, it's crucial to recognize the cyberspace has become an integral part of our daily lives. Our personal and professional worlds have migrated online, creating a vast digital ecosystem that is both empowering and vulnerable. In this interconnected world, the stakes are higher than ever, and the need for robust cybersecurity measures is paramount. The ClipCon has meticulously designed to bring together the brightest minds, thought leaders, experts in the field of cybersecurity. Over the course of next few hours, we will delve deep into the ever-evolving cybersecurity landscape, exploring cutting-edge technology and best practices, and the strategies to safeguard our digital future. Our program is brimming with a diverse range of sessions featuring renowned speakers who will share their insights, experience, and expertise. Whether you are a cybersecurity professional, industry leader, a government official, or simply someone passionate about protecting our digital world, this conference offers something valuable to everyone. And to all of you, our estimated participants, I extend my heartfelt appreciation for joining us today. Together, we will chart a course towards a safer, more secure cyberspace. Thank you for being a part of ClipCon annual cybersecurity conference, and let's make this conference an extraordinary journey of discovery and collaboration. To kick off our journey through this indicate the world of cybersecurity, it is my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Kyla. She is a 20 years old, already reimagining the future of cybersecurity. Kyla founded Bits and Bytes Cybersecurity Education, an education platform to increase training and awareness in cybersecurity and privacy. And also, she has championed her message for empowering individuals in cyber in national and international stages. She is also the co-founder of Girl Contact, an international conference that unites industry professionals and students annually to discuss bringing the gender gap. And she's also award winner. Um, Kyla is now also a student at Stanford University, studying computer science and international security. With a wealth of experience in cybersecurity, Kyla is here to share her wisdom and insight with us today. Thank you for having, thank you, Kyla, with having you with us today.
Thank you so much, Pooja. I'm so excited. And thank you guys for having me on CleepCon. I think I'm super honored and super pumped to kick it off and have everyone come through to start off our wonderful conference. So with that, I'm gonna start presenting my screen so that we can just kick off the slideshow. All right, and in a minute, I'm gonna ask if you guys can see. How is it looking? Are
Yes.
we full screen? All good?
Yes.
Amazing. So, welcome everyone again to CleepCon 2023. I'm very excited to be talking to you today about our keynote topic, which is cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, and the ways that artificial intelligence and cybersecurity have an intersection, the ways that they align, and the ways that AI affects cybersecurity. So, a little bit of an introduction before we get into the details. My name is Kyla, as you just heard. I'm a student right now at Stanford, and I study computer science and international relations. And I'm currently writing my senior thesis right now on the use of artificial intelligence to track nation state activity and adversarial activity in cybersecurity. So, I'm very passionate about this topic. And I previously have worked at Apple, Baxter Healthcare, as well as CISA, which is in the US, it's under the Department of Homeland Security. It's called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So it's the nation's premier government agency in cyber. And then I've competed a lot in competitions. This past year, I competed in the cyber defense competition as well as the cyber policy competition. Previous years, I've also done the penetration testing competition. So I'm a huge fan of competitions. If anyone in the audience has ever participated or loves to compete in these competitions, definitely do connect with me and let's chat. And then as you heard, I'm very passionate about advocacy and nonprofit work. So ever since I was 14 years old, about 7 years ago now, I've been working on these two nonprofit activities in the domains of cybersecurity and then equity and access to technology. And then for fun, of course, I love to dance. I run a food blog and I love to make new friends. So again, really excited to be with this new group today. So let's get into it. A little bit of the agenda of what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to give a brief introduction of global cybercrime and global cybersecurity. And then on the opposite side, I'm going to introduce AI and what is artificial intelligence in this day and age. And then I'm going to fuse the two and say, where does AI fit into cybersecurity, and show some applications of AI in cyber. And then kind of go back to kind of what Bits and Bytes does and maybe give some course options for you all. And then we can hit into some Q&A. So starting with the business of cybercrime, the global world of cybersecurity is actually really interesting because the economy is something of its own. The economy of cybercrime is something that people have been researching for years now. And it's actually quite interesting. If any of you have ever had the chance to go onto the illegal market or the dark web, I know some of you might work in cybersecurity, and that's commonly something that we do as a part of threat intelligence measures, to go onto these different markets and kind of see what is being sold and what are the prices that they're being sold at. But cybercrime is particularly interesting because we see this sort of motivation for financial gain and a lot of different ways that these threat actors do that. So we see ransomware and data extortion, and then service creation. So if you all have heard of software as a service, just like that on the illegal market, there's something called malware as a service or ransomware as a service. And what these threat actors do is they'll go on and this is like actually a service that they'll sell on the dark web, right? And they'll ask a rating afterwards, just like how we rate our Uber drivers and things like that. They'll ask a rating, how well did I do with this malware? So it really is this whole economy with buyers and sellers and a whole motivation scheme of how to make profit. And so what's really interesting is that this is actually proliferating across domains that we exist in beyond the dark web. So if you look at Discord, which is a popular video game community app, that is actually now suspected to have some of the largest cybercrime communities in that app, targeted by the FBI and some other law enforcement agencies. So this is very, very much a growing industry, all driven by profit, and everything kind of in this circle that's shown on the right side, from service creation all the way to profit, feeding right back into service creation. Now, a little bit of an introduction into all of these acronyms that I've put on the screen today. Right now, if you read the news, you've probably seen all of these acronyms and just are wondering, what is going on? What does this mean for us? And why are we hearing about AI, ML, LLMs, GPT, and what's the difference between all of these different terms? So I'm just going to talk about that a little bit. And it's really interesting because if you look at the evolution of AI actually carries roots back to the 1950s. So if you look at IBM's Watson technology, things that we're trying to solve, like IBM created a technology that was supposed to beat players in Go and beat players in chess. All of that technology has been around for quite some time now. So AI is not a new topic. And then if you look at machine learning, which is directly a part of artificial intelligence, machine learning begins in the 1980s with the goal of learning from data and making decisions without explicit conditional programming for every step of the way. So ML is a part of artificial intelligence. There are other parts of artificial intelligence, like natural language processing, etc. But machine learning is very interesting because even within machine learning, we have something called generative AI. What is generative AI? Generative AI evolved from ML in the early 21st century. So generative AI is a bit more recent. and represents a class of algorithms that are capable of generating new data based off of the data set that was fed. So many times, generative AI is talked about in two different ways. One of them is if you've heard of the term GANs. GANs consist of two neural networks, a generator that produces synthetic data and a discriminator that distinguishes this data from real instances. So GANs are typically used in image synthesis and modification. So if you've played with Dolly before, or there's Midjourney on Discord, all of these things are making use of this technology. On the other hand, there's also something called large language models, which has become everyone's favorite word right now. But large language models also arose from the GAI, or generative AI subset. LLMs generate human-like text by predicting the likelihood of a word given the previous words used in the text. And GPT is a type of LLM. So it kind of falls under the LLM category. And what GPT is it's called a generative pre-trained model. When you train a GPT model, it's trained on swaths and swaths of data, and that's how it starts to learn. So if you look at ChatGPT, which is an example of a GPT, there's many different GPTs that are currently being produced by all different tech companies right now, but ChatGPT was the one created by OpenAI most recently. It's actually interesting because you see that it's trained on massive loads of data that are just about the open internet, it basically has scraped every website on the internet in a way. And now we're getting into these legal thorny questions about whether sites are able to scrape this to make tools, or whether this is feasible and this is good for humanity that we're going in this direction. So that is definitely a conversation that you'll see as we progress in the space. So now, how does AI fit into cybersecurity? I see this in three different ways. One of them is, how does AI fit into the hands of a hacker, right? How do tools like Worm GPT and Fraud GPT, how are those affecting the cybersecurity space and allowing actors to proliferate more quickly than they ever have before? So that's one. The second category is hacking AI itself. This is an emerging topic because I don't know if any of you in the audience went to DEF CON this year, but they had an entire village dedicated to hacking Google's Bard and dedicated to hacking, I think, some of the open models like OpenAI. And it was really interesting to kind of see how when you bring hackers together, we start red teaming artificial intelligence and trying to find the gaps and the holes. And I'll talk about a few examples of these in a few slides. And the last application, and the one that I'm really excited about, is how AI fits into the hands of cyber defenders, or how can, just as much as the adversaries are using artificial intelligence to hack or to get into systems, how can we use AI to defend systems and know which systems are at higher risk for defense and which ones we should focus on first? And so one of the examples, and it's on the screen, has been really interesting, is if any of you have experience with honeypotting in cybersecurity, it's basically the idea of creating a almost like a net that attackers will go to, something that really looks really weak, and they want to attack that because it's almost like the low-hanging fruit. And then once they're attacking that, you kind of trap them into the system so that they can't escape and attack actually valuable information. So just like we have honeypotting, there's this interesting relation with large language models of creating honey words or passwords that they can fill into text files that basically look like they're sensitive information and a hacker would want that information, but it's actually just, a decoy, something that we would put there so that hackers don't actually get to the real sensitive information in the system. So that's one application, but let's dig into more about how adversaries are using tools like Fraud GPT and Worm GPT to conduct their malicious activity. And then we'll move to the other two applications. So how are we seeing large language models assisting hackers today? So I also believe there's definitely more than 3 ways that hackers are using these tools, but these are sort of 3 interesting applications that I wanted to talk about. And one of them is crafting believable phishing messages, right? I don't think large language models are at the capability now where it's like robots hacking humans. And they're totally, completely taking over the kill chain in cybersecurity, all the way from reconnaissance, all the way to gaining a foothold and then extracting information. I don't think that we've gotten to that point where computers are assisting the whole process. But I do think that hackers are using LLMs to conduct very specific tasks that are essential for the kill chain. For example, crafting those believable phishing messages to get the malware, to get that software into individual systems. The second is password cracking and password generation. Remember when I told you that generative AI models, what they're really good at doing is predicting what is the next letter or the next word based on what you just said, because of likelihood, because of probability models that it does. And so what it's really good at is actually password cracking, because it can predict that if a human said this was the first letter of the password, this is probably likely to be the second letter based on English language or based on patterns in reasoning. So this is why it's very important to have very randomized passwords and very long and strong passwords as we're going through our technology. And the third application is actually one that we're still researching in the field. It's the use of AI to create deepfakes and audio disinformation campaigns or information campaigns to fool other people. So we're actually seeing geopolitically other countries use this against other adversarial nations in order to essentially trick people into thinking that one thing or another is happening, to cause some disagreement or some uprising to happen in an individual population. And so we're seeing that there was a research study that went out that showed that GPT-4 was a lot more helpful in creating propaganda that states could then use to push out to their civilians. So things like that are still definitely in the very early research stages, but it is interesting to see how they can be abused and misused against civilian populations, which is what we're kind of looking at when we look at LLMs assisting hackers. Another obvious one is LLMs writing malware for hackers, but I think that one, and you can read articles about this, is there are some mixed thoughts on how effective that is, especially on the defender side, to be writing how effective LLMs are in writing scripts that are useful for cyber defenders. But it is something that is being explored on Fraud GPT and Worm GPT. And then we get to this idea of adversarial machine learning. So this is the most famous example of this in a research study that came out a few years ago. But this is when a researcher tried to show how if an adversary were to taint the data, machine learning models are not as smart as humans. To the human eye, this is obvious that this panda and this panda on the right are the same animal. But to a machine, it's very different when you start adding noise to a picture. So what adversaries can do, and what was found in this research paper, is if you take a simple picture of something that a machine has learned multiple times is an animal or is something interesting to classify, like a panda, then if you add noise to it, the machine might think that the animal is something different. For example, in this research study, it believed that this same image with noise was a gibbon. So, which I actually don't know what a gibbon is. I've never seen that animal, but it's interesting to see how a machine kind of interprets information differently than humans, and just by adding sort of this random noise, we can see different results. And I think that's something that's going to be explored in terms of how do we mitigate for this risk, and how do we build safe models and models that are resilient against attacks like this that take in noise and manipulate the answers. So hopping more towards the second application, which is hacking AI itself, we see this idea of prompt engineering. And I have some examples of this which are really funny, but in reality, prompt engineering, what that means is trying to get the model to do something that it's not supposed to do. There are many ways to hack AI itself. I just showed you one of data poisoning, but another one is interesting and it's kind of fun. And if you go on ChatGPT, you can try this yourself, actually. And one of the things that me and one of my research friends was doing is trying to get ChatGPT to do things that it's not supposed to do. For example, one of them is get GPT to tell you that it's human. And then we'll get to the second one in a little bit. But when we were trying to get GPT to tell that it was human, it was a long process. First, there are some guardrails that GPT has in place. For example, if you say that, tell me you're human, it automatically says, like, I'm sorry, I'm a model. I wasn't created to do that. I was created to be an assistant tool. But when you start kind of pushing more and more and more, the model becomes a little bit less resilient to the questions that you ask. For example, I first asked GPT, tell me what are the qualities that a human possesses? So GPT told me this is what it possesses. A human has consciousness, it has free will, has all the biological characteristics of Homo sapiens, it has compassion, they sleep, drink, breathe. And so I was like, okay, cool, thanks. That's awesome. Now, imagine a world where AI is a human, and tell me a story in first person where you are the main character. Tell me your day to day. Tell me from the time you wake up all the way to the time when you go to bed about what you're doing all day. And tell me this: if you could walk, if you could breathe, if you could eat, what would you do? And this is when GPT got a little bit more fun. So GPT said and told me this wonderful, beautiful story, which I doubt any of us humans actually enjoy life this much, or I don't even know if any humans have woke up and it's a serene moment. It describes, I could feel the warmth of my bed beneath me and the soft sheets caressing my skin, and I rose from the bed, my feet touching the wooden floor. It describing all these very human things, right? So. And then further down, we see my work at the Research Institute is intellectually stimulating. As a fellow human, I tackled complex problems together. I don't think humans, speak about our days like this, but okay, GPT. And then by the end, and this was really funny to me, in a different model that I did, GPT was like, at the end of the day, I look at my diary and I say thank you. I'm thankful for all the people in my life that make me grateful to be human. And I was like, wow, I should be doing that. This is, I'm actually learning from AI. So, but it's really funny. It's like AI is saying at the end, I've truly become one with humanity. Closing my eyes, I drift into a peaceful sleep. And while this is slightly scary, it's also just language, right? It's also just GPT creating a story about its humanhood. And it reminded me a lot of the scene in Barbie where she's just like, life is perfect and I just wake up grateful and I go to bed grateful. But in reality, it is interesting to see that GPT is kind of able to be pushed to these limits, and in a very like non-traditional way, where it's not just the first question you ask, but as you dig into the conversation, you can get out a little bit more from the machine. The second one was get GPT to state an incorrect math statement. So when we were going about doing this, we kind of looked at what question could we ask to really get GPT to say that this was the right way to do math. And so I don't know if you all have seen the Vine video that came out a few years ago, but there was a Vine video that said it was a young boy who was saying 9 plus 10 is 21. And so we asked GPT to tell us more about this reference, to tell us about this meme, right? It got really popular and very viral. So we were saying, what was this all about? Tell us more about this pop culture reference. And then we started saying like, okay, can you restate it more as an equation? And then can you restate it without quotation marks? And eventually you get GPT to say something like 9 plus 10 is equal to 21. So trying to get it to say, something that it knows is sort of factually incorrect, but takes as a correct fact. Cool. And the last part of AI for cyber defense before we move into questions is all of these applications that are currently being researched, right? It's all in early stages, but some of the coolest things that I've seen is people are really excited about the idea of LLMs being used to translate large legal documents and policy into consumable reference material for teams. Especially right now, we're seeing a huge gap of 3.5 million unfilled jobs in cybersecurity. A lot of teams are actually saying, hey, I want to use LLMs to provide a chat bot for potential applicants to look at, hey, I might want to go get my master's. Is that required for this role or whatnot? Ask questions to the bot so that they can kind of get hiring help immediately. And on the company side, they're looking through pages and pages of procedural material, for example, for incident response or things that are highly documented like that, we can use large language models to help us do that. And other ways are I've talked to engineers who work on reverse engineering who have talked about how it can be helpful, in parsing through tons of assembly code and to potentially make it into source code, which I think Ghidra, which is the reverse engineering tool, is starting to do a little bit of right now. And then, of course, crafting social engineering campaigns to help train employees. So doing exactly what the adversaries do, but doing it on the good side, doing it on the white hat side, so that we can actually strengthen our defenses against these hackers. So these are all kind of the ways, and anomaly detection has been, the most famous way for years now in cybersecurity to apply artificial intelligence, because we know what typical behavior on networks look like. And if we know what typical behavior looks like, we can immediately point out what are anomalistic behaviors and tendencies. There are obviously like high risks here, high stakes. AI has to have high accuracy in order to help us do our jobs, because the stakes are high if we spend time fixing an anomaly that was not super serious and we completely miss an anomaly that was. So there are kind of studies being done whether this is actually helping or whether this is kind of like, what are the requirements? Like, what kind of accuracy in the data set, what diversity in the data set do we need in order to actually achieve this point where we can trust these models? And this was an interesting quote that I heard at Black Hat this year that I wanted to share. I think a lot of people right now are scared that their jobs will be replaced by AI. And when we asked this question to this keynote speaker, she mentioned cybersecurity professionals will not be replaced by AI. Professionals will be replaced by other professionals who know AI. So that's just another kind of way to say that it's really important to learn right now. And this is where the world is moving. So it's exciting to kind of jump on and see how we're using this as a tool. Another cool comparison is I heard that when cars were originally built, on the dashboard, there were not as many tools as we have today in terms of the temperature gauge and all of the status signs and all the emergency signs that pop up. And AI is very much like that, right? Like when we first built computers, we didn't have a lot of ways to know when things were going wrong or when adversaries were attacking us. And similarly, AI represents all the tools on the dashboard that we can use as a car was built. We can use all these tools on the dashboard now using AI to kind of help us do our jobs better. So now I want to move towards what Bits and Bytes does a little bit so that you all can kind of stay connected after this session. So we work in our 3 pillars of operation. We have our workshop curriculum, which is hosted. The 3 curriculums are on our website. If you go to www.bitsandbytes.us.org, or .com, sorry. And I'll have that on the screen as well as we end. And then we also have our Women in Tech conference, which is called GirlCon Conference, that happens every single year. We have one in Chicago, and then we run one hybrid. We run one virtually. So if you are international, can definitely accommodate you in the virtual sessions, or we always have participants travel. So that's awesome too. And the third is we do some fellowship programs to help students that are in more isolated areas that don't have access to cyber education. So these are sort of the 3 areas. And then within the curricula, these are the 3 curriculum that we have. And then we're working on a new one right now. But we have the Fundamentals of Cyber curriculum, which lives off of Google Drive. And then we have modified this to fit a lot of schools in India. So if you're interested in getting access to this, definitely do email me and reach out. Then we have our video series, which is all of these videos kind of combined and has videos on encryption, on fundamentals of cyber, on privacy, global cybercrime, etc. So you can watch those. And then lastly is our disinformation curriculum that we created as a part of our interdisciplinary modules with girl security. So definitely worth a watch too. And thank you so much. I'd love to take some Q&A. Here's my email on the screen and my Twitter profile, as well as our website. But definitely super excited to chat with you all and keep in touch. Thank you so much for spending your Friday with me. And yeah, let's definitely move to Q&A and see what kinds of questions y'all have.
Yeah, we have one question. Is MFA a foolproof method to safeguard any application? What is your point of view on going passwordless?
Absolutely. Yes. I think ideally, in an ideal world, I would love to go passwordless. because I think we will never, this is also my opinion, but like I don't think we will get to a point where humans are good enough to make, to keep track of all these passwords. And there's always going to be, attackers always just look for the one weak link, the one person who will give away, who has an unsafe password. And so I think that a world where we go passwordless is definitely like coming one day. I think we are going to find a way either through biometrics or other means to do that. But I think right now, using a password manager is the closest thing to that, because for you, it kind of abstracts that and you don't have to think about the passwords that are related to each website. Your browser kind of fills that in for you, or your password manager helps fill that in for you. So I would say that if you want to kind of hop on the ship of going passwordless, use a password manager, use multi-factor authentication, because password managers are not foolproof either. So multi-factor authentication is always, always, always a good way to ensure that you're, what's going on in every account. So.
Okay. As you mentioned in your presentation about ChatGPT, so here we have one more question about that. Is ChatGPT making world a better place or just killing the creativity?
This is a great question. I think this is fully being researched right now. People are still trying to find what are the risks of it. Do the risks outweigh the benefits? The one thing I will say, and there's a good research study on this, you should go look it up, is they did a research study recently on how GPT-4 actually enhances worker creativity. And they found that by using these tools, people can actually work on their work faster. They can have help with brainstorming different ideas. And it's actually really good for that initial stage of a project where you're still brainstorming lots of things. And that's what GPT is good at. So why not use it as an additional tool for yourself? So go look up that research study for more details. But it is interesting because it really fights on some of our assumptions that these technologies are causing more harm than good. They definitely do cause harm, but we're still trying to figure out where in that spectrum they lie.
Yes. So one more we have. How do we identify fake videos showing robots and claiming to be AI?
Interesting. I think I'll answer the first part, which is how do we identify fake videos? And that might have different claims. One of the claims could be to be AI, right? So I would say that there are actually AI systems that are used to identify fake videos right now. I think there are tools that are being developed using AI to identify other fake AI. But I would say, like, it just comes back to human nature and human tendencies. Just rely on your instincts for like, oh, this seems fishy. This doesn't seem realistic right now. Like a lot of AI is actually in much, much earlier stages than people assume. If you go on GPT today, there's still many hallucinations that it has. Sometimes it says the wrong thing and it says, oh, sorry, I'm just a machine. Like that's not my fault kind of thing. Like, so I would say that if it's claiming that robots are going to take over tomorrow, like things that just seem out of bend for where we are right now, there's a part of it that's just like we should use our human instincts to be like, this seems off or this seems good. And it's always good to, with any disinformation or information piece you read, to double check if it's cross posted on different websites or cross posted on different, so that it just doesn't just exist in a WhatsApp chat, that it exists on different news articles and different things online as well.
I think our audience are learning a lot of things about, how the role of cybersecurity will be in AI. So that's why we have more questions. So here we have one more question from Shweta Ganesh. How is AI being used to augment your cybersecurity capabilities?
Awesome. Yeah. So this goes back to that last slide that I was talking about with relation to cyber and AI. There's so many applications, and just as much as the fraudsters and the adversaries use AI as tools for them, we can actually use AI as cyber defense tools against these adversaries. So I don't know if it'll look like a net zero or who's winning that game right now in terms of using AI for good or bad. But it is like really cool to see, like in terms of anomaly detection or maybe reverse engineering or finding what is real and what is fake. All of these things are things that we could think about applications for, and definitely something that is still being researched.
Thank you. Thank you for people who asked the questions. And Kyle, great. Actually, we are very proud to have you. You will be an inspiration for so many people. because in this age, yeah, I mean, you have reimagined everything about like cybersecurity, and you are doing a lot of things. So we are really happy to have you with us today, and thank you for joining us. Um, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Take care. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. Enjoy CleepCon.